when we're talking about hormone optimization, what we're ultimately doing, we're giving people good genetics, and it's not actually what we're doing. Testosterone is a big factor in what allows certain guys to shake things off in life a bit better, do a bit better under stressful circumstances. One of the things that we have to look at if we're going to consider testosterone replacement therapy is we are removing what's called the rate limiting factor towards production.
So when we think about the frame of performance, like how does testosterone for the average listener play into how they perform in each of these areas? Because I think what a lot of men think testosterone is something you jab into yourself when you want to get jacked, when we both know it's so much more. So how does it actually play into those core areas of performance, and how does it destroy you or build you up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of people conflate testosterone and anabolic steroids. Testosterone can also be abused as an anabolic steroid, but when we're talking about hormone optimization, what we're ultimately doing is I like to say we're giving people good genetics, and it's not actually what we're doing. We can't change the genome, but testosterone is a big factor in what allows certain guys to shake things off in life a bit better, do a bit better under stressful circumstances, while other guys would crumble and falter both physically and mentally. We see a lot of it, particularly in the mental department for the younger guys. We've got this relatively new health problem where younger men, even when they look after themselves properly, a lot of them don't, and that's the primary issue. But even younger guys who are looking after themselves really well have the testosterone levels of an unhealthy 80-year-old. And this is due to the modern environment. I call it the 3 Ps, the pollutions, plastics, and pesticides that a lot of us were raised with, particularly in Western countries. And it's had a devastating impact on male and female hormones. And this is hugely impacting how a lot of guys are feeling cognitively as they're coming into adulthood. I think one of the biggest challenges that guys are having is they don't feel capable and brave and courageous, but they're also not resilient to stress. They're not taking risks. They're not wanting to go out and leave their mark in the world. They've got the mindset of a man who's a lot more frail and meek, and they're choosing the path of least resistance. They're choosing to stay indoors and play video games because it's easier to get your sense of battle and sense of overcoming adversity from behind a screen. They're seeking out pornography because that's easier than the rejection and vulnerability that comes with intimacy. And now, there's things like OnlyFans and all these other things that guys are getting into to fill the role of a relationship. So when men are low in testosterone, it removes your body's primary counterbalance to stress. From a biological standpoint, this is against cortisol and adrenaline. And from an endocrine standpoint, it's against estrogen. And from a behavioral standpoint, it is the thing that allows you to get the both dopaminergic reward as well as the purpose-based and meaning reward from going out and doing hard things. And when we remove that buffer to stress, all of a sudden things become more difficult and less rewarding. So as humans who are reward-driven creatures, which is just how we are programmed or built or evolved, depending on what you believe in, we will always self-medicate these systems in the body, and we will always respond to our biology. And it's a big challenge for men when we start to understand the interconnected relationship of the human biology, but then also understanding that we are a sentient, conscious being on top of that. So it's kind of like we're a car that's alive, like the movie Cars. This is very tricky because now we're interacting with a whole bunch of other people who are going through life, experiencing this, learning these things, and we're having to form relationships, business relationships, friendships, all these different things that we're getting bombarded with. And I think it can be very overwhelming. I think it can be very challenging. And I think a lot of guys are missing the boat. I think a lot of guys are taking a left when they should take a right. And more men are getting bamboozled and gaslighted by the modern pharmaceutical industry to think that the solution for the fact that they live a depressing life is to take a pill which will alter their neurochemistry to think they are doing better than they are. And that this is a huge issue because the good thing is more young men are catching on to this and realizing that they do have endocrine issues. And a lot of the health issues that guys are having are self-inflicted. They're diet and lifestyle induced. And I think this needs to be the primary focus of men listening to this is look to essentially build your health foundation from proper diet and lifestyle practices, which are integral, not just for how you look in the mirror, but how you function as a vessel. And then if that fails and you don't get the reward that you should be having, that's when it's time to start looking into things like getting your blood work done and speaking to someone about hormone replacement therapy, if that is something that is needed. But the most important thing, which is why I'm booked out quite heavily in advance, is you need someone who knows what they're doing, who isn't just going to sell you the thing that they make a commission on, which a lot of the time these clinics do. They'll say, they have a hammer and everything looks like a nail. So you've got a problem, I've got the solution. Here's a bunch of testosterone. And this creates even more problems. So it's a tricky industry to navigate, and having someone on side who, again, I'm not trying to sell my services, I'm quite booked out, but having someone on side who can help you with this is absolutely integral for navigating this area of health.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out via the link below.
I mean, you and I both know there's a number of men listening who probably would benefit from looking into it. But the problem is they don't even see the benefits because they're so damn busy. And it's ironic, you talk about the dopamine factor and not finding pleasure in life and reward, which is why so many men watch porn and sedate. The people listening to this podcast, they're high performers, right? They have businesses, they have staff, they work hard, they grind. They don't have time for video games. But ironically enough, they sedate in other ways, right? They drink alcohol, they smoke weed, they watch porn. You mentioned OnlyFans. Or they grind with work itself, and then they wake up going, I have no fucking purpose. And to top it all off, what's happening is they're exhausted. They're exhausted, and they go to work and they push through, which is sort of why I wanted to bring you on. There's a lot of men here who can relate to what I went through. I was trying to optimize my testosterone. I was focusing on sleep, exercise, nutrition, but I was fucking depressed. I was stressed. I couldn't deal with pressure. I was a piece of shit to my wife. There are a lot of men out there that can relate to this. They're trying to do everything right. They're trying to eat well. They're trying to do exercise. So I want to unpack a few things here. The first one is, if someone's listening right now and they're exercising, let's say every day, and they're eating okay, but they're stressed out, they're sedating, and their marriage is falling apart, how does testosterone play into that? And how can they start to unravel those issues that are all interconnected?
Yeah, and this is where I think it's important to look at testosterone for what it is. And I think in some contexts, it can be a bit of a double-edged sword. And I've seen it play out as a double-edged sword a couple of times. So one of the things that we have to look at if we're going to consider testosterone replacement therapy is we are removing what's called the rate limiting factor towards production. So, if you are stressed and burnt out and, not sleeping enough and not looking after yourself properly, your body won't make as much testosterone as it would if you weren't doing that, because your body is now focusing on survival, not reproduction. So if you remove that pathway, so if your body is pumping the brakes and you're going up, I've got the solution. I'm going to come in with more accelerator. You're not going to have a smooth ride forward. You're now working against the body, not with it. So I think that one of the mistakes that guys can make is they go, I'm burnt out, I'm stressed, you're kind of like what you said, you are maladaptively coping towards your stresses with unhealthy behaviors, generally avoiding the thing that you need to be looking at, which a lot of guys are guilty of in all aspects of health and life. And you're going, okay, I'm going to solve the problem by turbocharging myself. And that will give me more capacity to be able to, do all these things I need to do and not get burnt out. Kind of like a hormone version of using things like Adderall or dexamphetamine. And if someone is going to use something like that, it's probably the healthier option for sure. But what we kind of have to look at with testosterone replacement therapy is that testosterone replacement therapy is very prone to side effects when it's not done right, either by the practitioner or the patient. And a lot of the time people blame the practitioner for things that are the fault of the patient. And what we have to do when we're looking at TRT is going, if I'm going to inject the levels of a healthy man of testosterone, I need to be living in a way that I would be creating those levels if I could. And the disconnect between how you're living and the levels that you're injecting are going to show up as side effects. And these can be things like acne, bloating, overconversion to estrogen. That they tend to be the big ones. Anxiety is a big one too. Insomnia, over agitation, various issues that guys can have. So I think if guys are going to be looking at this situation, I think they have to, I have this saying, which I learned from a friend of mine who was a mentor, which is this idea of meeting the medicine halfway. To go, okay, if I'm going to support the foundation of my health with optimizing my hormones, it will allow me to maybe not burn the candle at both ends, but it will give me a higher capacity for workload, which is generally what these guys are looking for. They're going, I have all this potential, I have all these opportunities, I have all these goals, but I'm not able to push myself as hard as I should be able to push myself. Cool. Well, testosterone will help you do that. But you also have to go, if I'm going to be a high performance individual, I also have to recover like an athlete. And that's the most important thing. So if you want to be able to go, I want to be more efficient, I want to be more resilient to stress, I want to be able to work productively more hours in a day, cool. Testosterone can help you with that. But it won't allow you to get away with the shitty nutrition, the lack of sleep, the lack of self-care, the massive psychological stress that guys put them through because they don't know how to decompress, they don't know how to switch off, they don't know how to spend time in nature, or they don't value doing that. And then you can basically get yourself in a scenario where you have the capacity to really do some damage with what people call burnout, which some people wear like a badge of honor, which is ridiculous. So you can definitely like now torch the candle at both ends if you want to, or you can probably get to that equilibrium happy medium point, which guys are looking for, which is I can work more hours in a day, I can push through, but I also need to look after myself well. And it's like a sports car. You can go faster, you can take the corner more aggressively, you can put the gas down and you can get more charge out of the vehicle, but you got to look after it, you got to know how to drive it, you got to service it. And a lot of guys want the sports car, but they don't want to learn how to drive it or have the responsibilities that come with servicing it. And that's the big issue that guys can have when they start this. Some destined for greatness do fantastic with it. Others do a number of them on themselves because they're either not taking advice and they're not taking input, or they're not being responsible with their own health.
You have to understand is that testosterone does not by default make you a masculine man. It facilitates you becoming that man, but it will not do that work for you. How does testosterone impact how you feel, and how are those mechanisms occurring in the brain?